While the women are weaving their fairy crowns, you have a golden opportunity to tell some fairy stories, and indeed invite them to share their stories. These are fairy stories with a difference. They are your connection with the elementals, Nashi, and not a fairy story that you might read from a book. If you don't have any of your own, please feel free to use this example. Myself and my husband have a huge connection with the Hill of Tara, and once upon a time we were there and we met a young art student who had found a fallen elm log, and very unusually this log was hollowed out by a beautiful colony of earwigs that were walking away from the log. And he realised that it was forming a natural didgeridoo like the termites make in Australia. So he whittled away at the other end and began to play this instrument just like a didgeridoo. My husband was absolutely charmed, and Dan, as his name was, said, "I gift this to you." Well, we were beyond excited, and we stayed for many hours on the hill talking with Dan and his friends and practicing with this wonderful didge. And John decided to call this wonderful instrument Danu, after Dan and after Mother Earth, Danu. When we arrived home to our house, it was very late, nearly midnight, and we opened the door, took everything with us, plonked it inside, and up we went to bed, tired after the day's exertions. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I could feel a presence in the house. I looked to my husband, who was also awake, and he said, "I think we're being burgled." He took up a hockey stick or some sort of walking stick, walked all the way around the house, checked all the doors and rooms, nobody there. When he got back into bed and closed his eyes, he could see through his clairvoyance, and I could see with my inner knowing, a small man pad into our bedroom, jump up on the bed and stand with large, hairy, naked feet on either side of my husband's chest, looking down with him, not a happy person. The two of us were absolutely shocked. This was a small elemental man who was trying to give us a message. My husband was absolutely terrified. I couldn't believe this. And suddenly I knew in my heart, it's to do with Danu. It's to do with this musical instrument. We haven't honoured this. We haven't welcomed this into our house and introduced this sacred item to our medicine bundles, to our other sacred instruments. He nodded his head, jumped off the bed, and we could see him literally pad down the Navan Road on his way back to Tara. Instantly, my husband jumped out of bed, went down, took Danu, the elm didge, and introduced to all of the sacred items in our home. "Thank you for coming into our home. Are you comfortable? Where would you like to live in our house?" And there was a peace and calm that reigned throughout our home. Back up to bed, and we both slept. A couple of weeks later, we were back on the Hill of Tara, and we met Dan, the young student, and he said, "How are you getting on with that musical instrument?" And we looked at each other and thought, well, something interesting happened. And we told Dan the story, and he went, "Oh, was he about this high? Did he have a pointy chin, a hat, legs with hairy feet?" "Yes," he said. "Oh, I know him. He lives up here on the hill. He's a bit grumpy. He doesn't give you his name. Does he look a bit like a kind of cross between a leprechaun and a goblin?" "Yes," we said. "Yeah, we know him." Well, we were mesmerised because this chap happened to be in Tara an awful lot, living nearby, so he knew this elemental. What happened after was quite interesting. My husband, who is a shamanic therapist, often is called to work with children who are sick. And it's hard to do that because our emotions get in the way. So he invites in this wonderful Tara leprechaun goblin, and he comes in and works very impassionately with the children. He does the work. He can remain with his professional distance which allows my husband to do the work, but with this beautiful otherworldly intermediary. Thankfully, he doesn't have to work with him too often because the children usually get well very quickly, which is wonderful. Interesting enough, he's never given either of us his name, but it's a lovely example and a story I love to share about how the other world, Nashi, can work with us humans in a beautiful collaboration, very much honouring themselves and of course honouring and respecting us. And again, a beautiful indication of how the sacred items in our homes must be honoured and respected.